talk about a different kind of action now. The gavel has come down on the first round of auctions in the government's emissions reduction fund. Now, 43 companies will be paid just over $660 million to eliminate 47 tonnes of carbon. Now, this is at an average price of around $14 a tonne. Environment Minister Greg Hunt says the result is stunning and the government will exceed its targets.
And we'll do it not just by the skin of our teeth. We will go well beyond what we have committed. We will achieve in a very significant way, as we did with the first international period, our targets. We'll achieve more than we set out to do, and more than that, we wouldn't have done this under the carbon tax.
We went to the last election with a well-known policy in relation to climate change. It involved an auction. We rejected the idea of a carbon tax. We are delivering on that. It means that Australia will meet its emissions target, and you're not going to penalise households with a carbon tax along the way.
Mike Carlton, is this good news for people who want to see the emissions target met?
Oh, I doubt it. I'd keep those recordings there because you'd be able to use them in evidence, I think, in a year's time when the whole thing falls on its face. Look, unlike almost everybody else in the media, I am not an expert on carbon sequestration and abatement and climate change and God knows what else. But I do know that this government, I suspect that this government is lying through its teeth, as it has in so many other aspects of its policy failures, and I confidently expect that it won't work out this one as well.
OK, well, someone who did confidently expect it was Greg Sheridan today. You opened your column in The Australian with saying that Greg Hunt could have just won the next election for the coalition. Can you explain to us why?
Yeah, and it's, of course, Julia, you meant to say 47 million tonnes that will be allegedly avoided under this scheme. Well, first of all, if you believe in emissions trading schemes, you believe that you can buy abatements. So there's no reason why the government can't buy abatements in Australia rather than buying them in Europe. We do know, of course, that emissions trading schemes have been spectacularly corrupt and ineffective. And I think what is happening is the whole debate is just moving on. Carbon taxes and emissions trading schemes are basically dead. They haven't worked anywhere in reducing carbon. All they've worked is doing.
In China, aren't they?
No. This is great baloney. This is fantastic baloney. Never let the facts get in the way of reality. In China, the permits are given away for free, and they affect less than 1% of the target economies in the tiny little bits of the country where they're trying them. In California, they affect less than half of abatements, half of emissions. They're subsidised, and so on and so on and so on. But there is good news on the horizon. What is causing abatement is three entirely different things. First, you're getting massive natural gas through fracking. In America, the Greenies hate fracking, but it's giving you gas which is much cleaner than coal. Second, coal itself is being cleaned up. The coal technology is becoming a lot cleaner than it used to be, just as you get more modern coal power stations. And thirdly, countries around the world are embracing nuclear energy, which is much less carbon intensive than coal. But at the same time, of course, India, China, Pakistan and much of Asia are continuing to increase their carbon emissions massively, so that any efforts that we make in Australia are utterly minuscule in any event. However, there's no doubt at all the government is completely committed to meeting this 5% target, which is actually a 13% target on a 2005 basis. Given our population increase, that's a perfectly respectable per capita target. So we will have met the first Kyoto period targets, we will have exceeded the 2020 targets, and we'll do well beyond that.
Bet you we don't.
In reality,
bet you we don't.
In reality,
Here and now.
Well, yeah, and you've been wrong on this entirely, Mike, and you'll be wrong again. But in reality, most of this abatement has not come about through any government action.
Do you want me to go through the errors in your column today?
No.
Do you want me to go through the blatant errors in your column today about your abatement
most of this has come about most of this has come about not through government action, but through those natural technological means that I
shot through with errors.
Okay, Mike, if you can respond to why you disagree with the substance of what Greg is saying.
I disagree with the not of what Greg is saying, of what Greg Hunt is saying. I do not believe they can deliver on this promise.
Why?
Because they have lied with so many other promises, and I suspect this is, again, smoke and mirrors that we're seeing. The proof of the pudding will be in the eating down the track. I don't think they can deliver it. But as I say, I'm not an expert on this stuff. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an economist. But I have a feel for when the wool is being pulled over my eyes. At the moment, I feel like I'm buried in Merino.
But just a tiny technical point on the funding. You see, in reality, of course, this scheme isn't the be-all and end-all. In reality, what is driving our emissions down is, first of all, the export of our manufacturing industries to China, the disappearance of the aluminium smelters and so on, and secondly, all the technological changes that I'm talking about. Our coal stations will be renewed and they'll be much cleaner than the old coal stations. So the government is not relying entirely on the abatements captured in this auction to meet its 5% target. But I've got absolutely no doubt we'll meet that target just as we met the first Kyoto target.
Now, Greg, also, one thing that's been notable about direct action is that much of the discomfort or concerns expressed about it have actually come from coalition backbenchers who've been talking to reporters, you know, on background, briefing them for many months now. Do you think those concerns have been substantive? Will they now be assuaged?
No, well, I don't agree with the substance, the preposition of the question there, Julia. The concern was about the carbon tax. There was massive community hostility to the carbon tax.
Yeah, but half the government back then thinks
no, Mike, you've got to let us... We'll have a better
plot.
discussion, Mike, if we both allow each other to finish our questions. I know that's a bit foreign to your culture, but we'll do better that way. And now, the concern in the community and in the political class was with the carbon tax. Now, these measures...
Sorry, Greg, I was specifically talking about members of the coalition who have
members of the coalition would be
concern.
infinitely more concerned if the government was implementing Labor's carbon tax than it is with this direct action. But the whole point is that the vast majority of the cuts which are coming to carbon emissions are not coming out of this auction process, but also every other country which is doing well in this space is using direct action. There is no carbon tax or ETS scheme in the United States or in Canada, and they are both going to meet their targets.
Okay. All right, now we can just move on to global issues now, because two